Well, welcome to Roost News, the place for all things volunteer. I am Louise Gallagher, a team member for the Roost News podcast. And I'd like to welcome our guest today, Marissa Volpe. She's Associate State Director for Outreach and Engagement in the Colorado AARP State Office. And we have some other volunteers, Niki. Delson is chair of Age Friendly Carbondale, and another volunteer is Frank Sgambati. And we also have AARP volunteer for the Colorado State Office, Cristy Moran, with us today. They're going to share information on the project to meet the needs of Colorado's rural community. And we want to thank you all for being here today on the podcast. Prior to hearing your story, though, if you could each share a little bit about you, and we'll start with you, Marissa. How long have you worked for AARP, and share a little about your role with the state office of Colorado for AARP?
Well, thank you so much, Louise. It's my delight to be here with you and to be serving the great state of Colorado, Colorado Spanish for meaning red and ruddy. And I get to serve 64 counties across the state as the lead director for livable and really diverse communities. So thinking about how to make all of Colorado more livable, where folks want to age in their community, they want to make their communities vitals for.
Okay, got a little freeze here. Okay. I think Marissa will give it a minute since you're frozen up. And Cristy, you want to share a little bit? Oh, there you're back. So you want to go ahead and finish up there, Marissa? We froze up a bit.
Thanks. I was just sharing about directing outreach for livable communities across the state, really making communities age friendly with action plans, but also offering a wide range of resources so that all communities can experience that livability.
Great. Well, thank you, Marissa. And Cristy, you also are a volunteer with the state office in Colorado for AARP. So let's hear a little bit about your role briefly.
Yeah, I came to Colorado from Florida. So I'm originally Miamian and my family lives down there. And I was working as a librarian for years there. And I came to Colorado with the Colorado State Library. I no longer work there. I work as a library branch manager, still in the North Denver metro area. But in that previous role, I served as, and in many ways continue to serve as like a librarian. I always say like the librarian for librarians around the state, which puts me in this position, this amazing position to be able to connect libraries, like organizations and individuals who work in libraries with other organizations and one another too. So I've been like formally and in a role at work and informally as just myself volunteering for AARP Colorado since I've been in Colorado with a mom who is a long lifetime AARP member and so living the dream.
Great, great. Okay. And let's hear next from you, Niki, a little bit about yourself and your role, what you do, a little overview.
So Age-Friendly Carbondale was created in 2019. We're one of I think Colorado was the third state in the United States to join the Age-Friendly Network, which is under the umbrella of AARP and the World Health Organization. We are a totally volunteer organization. We have no paid staff and are thrilled to be here to be able to share what it is that we have been able to build and create in partnership with many other organizations in Carbondale, Colorado, which is a rural mountain town.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, let's hear a little bit from you, Frank, about your role.
Hi, yeah, I work with Niki. I'm on the board with Age Friendly Carbondale. And we've been in existence for about the last 7 years. I moved here from New Hampshire to be closer to my kids who, came out to Colorado. We were retired, and it's like, hey, what are we doing? We need to be with our kids. So anyway, when I got here, I had heard about, this organization starting up, and I was really excited to join. And you'll hear more about it, and it's been history since. It's been
Great,
great.
great. Well, we're thrilled to have all of you. So let's begin the conversation of what AARP Colorado State Office implemented to actually meet the needs of the rural 50 plus communities. They're addressing these rural communities very successfully, implementing a project to address the particular needs of this community. So, Marissa, let's start the conversation with you by sharing what is meant by a rural and frontier communities, and why do you feel that rural communities are a leading aging work?
Absolutely. So when we think about rural or frontier,
Oh, a little bit of freezing. Ah, hopefully it'll come back on. Ah,
how
okay,
about now?
there you go. Yep.
Okay, so when we think of rural or frontier, we tend to think about population size, of course, metropolitan, thinking about 50,000 plus. But there are a lot of variables that go into this, mainly geographic isolation, which, of course, Colorado, by nature of our landscape, houses a lot of isolated communities and really distance to those urban centers. So we have to think really intentionally on what strategies we are going to use to meet those needs of those populations. These are communities that are very
It froze again a bit. Hmm. Okay, Marissa, you still there?
for me now,
Okay, now we can hear you. Yeah, you're back.
and are typically about 60 minutes or further from urban areas. So we wanted to create a strategy to meet people where they were. Rural and frontier communities meet the needs of older adults because many times they're tightly knit communities that are agile, resourceful, and have high levels of trust. This makes an incredible impact, sometimes even more so than the dense urban areas. And so we really wanted to think about strategies that would connect in those ways to those high levels of tightly knit communities.
Hmm, great. And for the project, you provided information that involved the libraries in Colorado. Can you talk about the programs involving the libraries and the partnerships? Maybe Cristy, you want to start and hop in now and talk a little bit
Yeah,
about that?
absolutely. I
Okay.
love that. I love that we're talking about rural and mountain communities. I say this all the time. Um, the middle of nowhere for a lot of people is the middle of everything, right? For a lot of other people. When we think of Colorado, I know before I moved here, I thought it was Denver. I thought Denver was in the middle of the state. I was totally wrong. The vast majority of people do not live in these metro areas in our state. I had talked to you about library land. There are 112 library districts in the state of Colorado. That's library jurisdictions. The vast majority of the 268 locations of libraries in Colorado are not in metropolitan areas or suburban areas. They're in rural and mountain communities, very much like the Carbondale Library, which is a part of the Garfield Library District, which from east to west is a 2 hour drive. Like it's wild. But along the way, you've got these libraries that serve really as these community hubs. So Marissa and I have talked many years now about how to connect with these rural communities. You have to find a community hub. And so in many places, the library serves as this almost like everything place, right? It's a meeting place. It's a place where you get your technology. It's the place sometimes the only person that you see all day is going to greet you at the door. And information, I mean, aging communities come to the library for everything from exercise to technology, like access to technology education to just getting information. Libraries are regardless of what goes on in the news and what we hear, some of the most trusted and regularly surveyed at the most trusted institutions in a community. And these libraries, partnerships are mission critical for libraries, right? It's how libraries can extend service, build capacity to serve, whether it's 2,500 people or 700,000 people. This is like the communities we're talking about sometimes, or just to meet people where they are, right? So what is it that my community needs? The library itself will tell you. And AARP partnered with some of the libraries in the state. So I reached out to the library network and kind of connected them with Marissa in rural and mountain communities to say, okay, who's serving who where? Who has the capacity to serve? Who needs help in serving? And where can AARP actually position volunteers and staff to really reach out into the community and engage folks in age-friendly practices and honestly, just services overall, right? So AARP at the library, I think, was born from that, kind of building out some of the already existing partnerships that AARP does with libraries all throughout the country, right? Being really intentional about what the character of that community looks like, right? Carbondale was in the same library district as Parachute. It's another city, totally different libraries, totally different communities. And so how does AARP position volunteers from the community to meet the needs of the community, right? And really helping those libraries build capacity and helping those communities build resilience and capacity too.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Cristy. And Niki, you serve as the lead age-friendly Carbondale person. And the congratulations, by the way, on being the 2025 Andrus Award winner for the state of Colorado. How has your work as the lead age-friendly volunteer coincided with the rural project that is our podcast topic today?
Well, I think so much of what of being a leader is recognizing, particularly in a rural area, that if you don't build relationships, if you don't know the people, and if you don't know the people, then it's very hard to move forward any project that you're going to do. And one of the things, if you do the research on what makes a livable community, so much of that writing is urban centric. And it's very, very different when you live in a rural community. People say, oh, you're from Colorado, you must know so-and-so who lives in Denver. Well, Denver is 3.5 hours from Carbondale, and that's when the weather is good. When the weather is bad, it could be 2 days before you get to Denver. So reaching out and developing those relationships is one of the advantages that rural communities have and rural mountain communities have, because it is through the relationships that you could build the capacity in a community to make it age-friendly. And so when we formed in 2019, the entire first year of our existence was getting to know who are the community leaders, who are named as community leaders, but not necessarily the power makers. And how do you move forward in a small rural community to make the kinds of changes that are written about in the research, but we can actually make it happen, and we can make it happen without getting involved in bureaucracy, because we know the people to go to, so we don't have to wait online for an appointment or something like that. So we just walk in, and very often we'll use the age card, meaning, well, I don't have the time to wait for an appointment because, well, I'm going to be 83 in a couple of days. So I don't have time because my time is very limited. So I need to see you now. And that's a very valuable relational kind of thing. So libraries in Carbondale are one of our partners. We have many, many partners. Libraries are a big, important part of what we do in Carbondale, and Frank will talk more about that as it being the hub of the community. But what I want to say about rural communities is because we don't have the bureaucracy to deal with, we could be very innovative. We can take something and move it forward because we can present an idea, and then that idea will just take on a life of its own because the community will stand behind it. So we have partnerships with the Department of Transportation. We have partnerships with RAFTA, which is the Roaring Fork Transportation Authority. We have partnerships with other nonprofits, with the police department. All of that moves together and brings the community together for, I would say, aging in community. And I think the most important part of our narrative is that you're aging from the time you are born. It's not a place that we are. It's a process that we're all going through. And so I'm just further along the line, say, of that process. But my great-granddaughter, who's 2, is along that process also. And I'm not going to take any more time because I would love for Frank to share what it is that we've been able to do with partnering with the libraries in our rural community. And then if there are other things you'd like me to address, I'd be happy to do that.
Well, thank you, Niki. That's very informative. So, Frank, as a community partner, you're involved in the Garfield County Library System to have the human library available to patrons. So, what exactly is the human
Sure.
library, and how does this interact with this rural project that we're talking about today?
Sure. I just want to back up for a minute. What really attracted me to the whole AARP and, that whole lens was I thought, like many people, that it was really centric towards elderly people. And it is, that is an area, of course, of focus. However, what I love about it is really talking about, and Niki alluded to this, fully inclusive communities. So it affects one group, it affects all. And that's what brought me in. Inclusion, acceptance, and everyone has a place and a role in the community. So I love that. In terms of the library, Cristy was like right on. I've lived in several different places, around the country, and I have to say, living in Carbondale, you walk into the library and it really is a centerpiece of the community. It's like just a beehive of activity, kids and people, warm, welcoming. I just love it. And everyone, we're so proud of our libraries. So that being said, Niki and I were walking one day, and she mentioned to me, she said, "Have you ever heard of the Human Library?" And I said, "No." We talked a little bit about it, but it piqued my interest. So I went home. I did all this research, on the computer, and it's like, wow, this is phenomenal. And we have to bring this to Carbondale. We have to bring this to library. And what it is, a human library, it's an international nonprofit. It started in Denmark in the year 2000. And what it is people play the roles of an open book. So individuals and communities who may have been discriminated against, disenfranchised, marginalized, they have the opportunity to be this open book and to tell their experience. And groups of people who come to hear are the readers, and they can ask any question of these individuals, what their life is like, how that, happened, just anything about them. And we really encourage that. We want them to ask like provocative questions. And, if it's something that's really uncomfortable for the quote, the book, they don't have to answer it, but they can say something like, we haven't published that chapter yet, but when we do, we might get back to you, that kind of thing. And so what it is it's like a formalized meeting where people get together and you have the books and they go through just a very basic training. They tell their stories, and then we divide people who come to hear that into smaller groups. And so there's groups of anywhere from 5 to 12 people in a group. And then there's the book, and then they can ask those questions. And the whole idea or the whole point is to unjudge people, to learn, to connect. And it has been phenomenal. So when we brought it to um, Garfield Library, they were really, really excited. It was like kind of open arms. It's like, yeah, let's do this. Like just, and so we've had four sessions, and one in Carbondale, one in Glenwood Springs, and one in Rifle. And then we're starting to do that all over again. And the library is so excited, and they see this as one of their premier um, things that they offer to the community. And they love this partnership between Age Friendly, AARP, and the library. Some of the books that we've had have been pretty out there, but really welcomed, and people have really enjoyed. We've had examples like someone who survived sexual abuse, someone who is incarcerated, someone who is drug addicted, an individual who's living with a spinal cord injury, an individual who is trans, an individual who is a drag queen. We've had undocumented, and also someone who's like experiences like depression, that kind of thing. So anyway, the whole purpose is to promote understanding, to listen to people, and to unjudge. And that's what the Human Library is. And it's been phenomenal. People love it. And the library is just so excited to partner with us in doing this.
It really brings things to life having the persons talk about their experiences. That's fabulous. That's great. So thank you, Frank. So in thinking about the 50 plus population and those who live in rural communities, what can you share that would support the request to age in place where their needs are met? Marissa, what can they do to help support themselves?
Absolutely. And thank you. think I'm on a different computer now, everyone. Um, AARP really has some phenomenal assets and resources that go further when they're partnered with these local experts, the community members who can take those assets further. So, for instance, one program we are working with AARP at your library will be introducing the Home Fit Guide in rural communities. And that is our premier asset around aging in place. A fact that we know is that rural folks want to stay in their community more than urban folks. There's a real dedication to place and wanting to stay in place, live in your home or live in community. So first and foremost, we offer that home fit guide training in English and Spanish, and then doing that locally, thinking about, as one participant brought up as at our latest meeting, now, are the door handles bear proof? Very important.
Yep.
So we really want to think about those rural considerations and how we can adapt those resources to meet the needs of our local communities. We have a plethora of additional assets of which Niki has worked with, things like our walk audits to make our communities more walkable and safe. We've worked with our emergency preparedness, very important for rural communities to be thinking about what is our local plan if we have a fire or a flood, both very common to Colorado. We have assets around parks and public spaces, very important. We also offer grants, and I just want to bring that up that AARP is a funder in this space. Both Carbondale and many other libraries in the state have received what we call our local investment funding towns. Those are grants that AARP pulls out and says, just for our rural communities, we're going to focus. And then, of course, our largest grant, which is the Challenge Grant. This year, 67% of Colorado's challenge grants were dedicated to rural and frontier communities. So these are some of the resources, the assets that we want to be thinking about and focused on rural communities.
Great. Well, thank you, Marissa. So, this is sort of something for all of you to think about. As each of you reflect on this project that you've been doing, is there anything that would have added or enhanced the project, or something perhaps that you would have done differently? And maybe we could start, let's see, let's start with you, Frank.
I was just thinking something that we would have done differently. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or something
Okay.
that may have enhanced it or could improve it. Just back sort of doing the Monday night quarterbacking, looking over what we have and yeah, anything you would do differently or
Sure.
perhaps learning so that you've learned something and so you've changed,
Okay.
or you're going to change something.
What's been so wonderful and so unique about age-friendly Carbondale is that um, we're a varied group of people, the board, and people have different interests. And it's been so wonderful that people who have interests in their passions have been able to pursue that. So like there's a woman on the board who's really into the environment and she loves trees. So we've gotten together to raise money to put trees around Carbondale, that kind of thing. We have an individual who's great writing and writes for the newspaper or article and stuff. So I get, and I'm like really involved with the human library. But as Niki alluded to also before, is there's just so many areas that different people are interested in. And to be honest with you, I just love that. And so I can't really criticize in terms of, what will we do differently because we just had this opportunity to really pursue what our passions were and we've gone with it. So it's been a real plus plus for me anyway.
Great, great. Well, thank you, Frank. Nikki, do you have any comments from your point of view?
Well, not so much of what I would do differently because it's been a learning process. And, we came in with a blank slate and Marissa has just been saying, go with what your community needs. But in thinking back now, because we're in our 7th year, I wish I had in the beginning been able to articulate a particular mission that now is the mission that we have, which is that you very often hear people talking about, oh, this gray tsunami, the people in my generation that are just going to flood and overwhelm the system and just use up all the resources and leave nothing left for anybody. And what we've seen and what we've been able to do is change that narrative locally so that older adults are not seen as just the users of resources, but are the resources of a community to make that community vital. And I think that once we combined that narrative, which is, hey, we retired and we still have had great careers or have been working in our own homes or whatever it is that we've done with that part of our life, we still can give that back to a community. Hey, no cost. And in a rural community, that is so important because the town doesn't have very much money. We don't have these big budgets. So I think that narrative combined with when AARP started, I mean, I know we focus on older adults, but I think that it was like several years ago where I read something that said when you build a town for a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, at first it said 8, if you build it for 8, for a child age 8, you're also building it for a person named age 80, because everything that we do, it takes in everybody. But I'm already over 80, so I don't want them to cut off there. And my mom lived to 103, so I definitely don't want them to cut off there. And here in Carbondale, children are riding bikes and skiing when they're still in diapers. So it's from birth to grave, really. And when I think that you go to a community with that narrative, you get everybody on board. We're not competing for the small amount of money that rural communities have. We're all working together to make the community vital and vibrant for everybody. So I wish I knew and could articulate that narrative 7 years ago when we first started, but I can still do it now. And so I'm happy about that.
Well, I think what I've heard from both you and Frank is things are constantly evolving and changing, but mostly everything seems to be continuing to move forward to strengthen your community and the bonds and relationships, which sounds wonderful. So, Cristy, do you have anything to add in terms of things you see a little differently or how you might have changed in terms of reflecting? What do
Well,
you?
I could speak. I'm so glad, Nikki, you just mentioned the in a rural community, really the people are the resource, and funding, right? Money is not just like, it's just not there. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions about libraries. First of all, we could just do whatever. Second of all, like everybody can come here and every person who works here is going to be perfectly equipped to do all the things all the time. The more the public sector kind of gets funded less and less and less, and we're talking like more broadly, like social services and health services and transportation, more and more starts to fall on library folks who are not equipped, right? Like I'm very smart. I'm not great at most things I try, and no matter how hard I try, right? And so if that's me and just one person, imagine like all the people who are employed in these places. So really having a little bit of grace when walking in the door and trying to work with a library is really, really important. Libraries, like I said, are mission critical partnerships, are, like they go hand in hand with libraries, because we frankly just do not have the staff or the expertise, and we shouldn't, right? We should be the face of the community, filled with people from the community telling us what it is they need and how it is that they're going to serve the rest of the community. So sometimes I just offer a space. You all are very lucky to be in one of I call Garfield County Library District my library home away from home. I've like just noticed while I was on this, I've like their Tumblr with me. I love them. And so that's a very loved and supported by the community and community supporting library district. That's not always the case, right? And we have many libraries who are constantly on the threat of being defunded, or, even just, there's just not enough money. It's not even like anybody's trying to defund them. There's just like not. We have libraries that are only open 4 days a week, right? You have libraries that are providing, I'm from Florida. Public libraries are your emergency shelter when there's a hurricane, right? Like that means I'm not home when there's a hurricane to board up my own windows, right? And so just what I hope that I'm conveying is that there is this real desire, and there are some challenges, right? And so there has to be a conversation about what volunteers, what organizations can do with libraries, while understanding that the libraries often want to do a lot more, or are being asked to do a lot more than they can't do. So there has to be a real capacity conversation, right? And then a desire conversation. Another thing I want to say, because it's summer, so we should just say it, I have people here all the time. Libraries spend a lot of money on kids. And there are library certifications, like degrees and stuff, for being a children's librarian. Do you know what one of my greatest fights in my career is? Is that there's not one for adults, let alone for older adults. And I got to tell you, gerontology is its own like medical field, right? And so imagine serving older adults. And what is an older adult, right? Is 50 an older adult? And how is 50 and 83 the same or different? This could be hugely different, right? And so, they're also within my field, a huge opportunity to really touch into, like Niki, like Frank, right? Like the folks who live in community who are able to say, well, from my lived experience and also from my expert opinion, because I've had this career, right? So I think there are a lot of opportunities, and there's so many wonderful, rich things happening in communities that are huge and communities that are really small. I've been to many libraries in Colorado, and they're all very loved by the people who live, whether it's 1,000 people who live in that community or 1,000,000. We're very lucky to have great libraries, and we're very lucky to have a great AARP and great folks who live in our communities who are volunteers, who are connecting with our libraries to further build the capacity of the library, right?
The people are the resources and the richness, aren't they, of every community?
Of every community.
And you have obviously all have stated that, I think, nicely today. And how about you, Marissa? What do you have any thoughts on that? Anything you would have done differently, or something that would enhance what you're currently doing? So.
I think really thinking about my colleagues in different states, thinking about launching either a pilot project with libraries or supporting their age-friendly leads with libraries. One of the real assets has been really Cristy along here to help us think about where and who to partner with. A lot of times, state offices feel like we have this artillery of resources and we just need to deploy them. But this idea of absorptive capacity, it's one of those expensive graduate school words that I learned I rarely get to use, really means that's great and you're so well intentioned and you want to share all this, but what is the actual capacity to absorb these things in community? Who is going to really carry that and lead with those assets? And who are you intentionally partnering? So, this summer and fall's rural library pilot, we really cultivated who those were going to be with and think about, okay, who has space for this? Who has the community? Who's already doing some of this work? So some of that groundwork has been tilled. So it wasn't like the state office is deploying and sort of just, showing up in these rural communities where we've never been. Very important. The other piece I always talk about, I'm very passionate about, is intersectionality, that idea that there's many identities happening at the same time. So we've all been using the word rural, which probably conjures up some images and ideas, but knowing we have a lot of intersections within our rural and frontier communities. We may have um, a strong Latino community that's intersecting with the more dominant rural community, and how are we thinking about meeting those needs? I can share that I spent time with the Southern Ute this past week, and really the strategy there I learned was for AARP to be invited into their elder conference. So thinking, okay, the strategy isn't we build it and they come, it's build trust and then we go there. So I think we have to get more sophisticated in how we keep pulling apart some of the intersections of the communities and thinking how intentional are we really being. It's not a one size fits all. We know what works in Denver doesn't work in Rifle. And then even thinking of who's in Rifle and how that's really going to be well received. So that's been some of my learning, but it's been a pure delight and just an honor to work alongside these superstars.
I second that notion, I'll tell you. So thanks everyone for sharing that. And I want to move more to the national office for a few minutes. What is AARP nationally? This is for you, Marissa, probably doing to support the assets already in place in Colorado communities? And what do you see AARP doing nationally to support rural communities? Are there resources available that can assist state offices as they work in their rural communities? So what do you think?
Absolutely. And I may have made mention of some of those assets earlier, of those toolkits, resources that are really meant for folks to take and adapt for their community needs. As a staff, we have access to something called the Rural Roundtable quarterly, and that's where we gather and listen to best practices of how folks are meeting the needs of rural communities. And I have to really say, at that national level, it's really going to be partnerships, partnerships, partnerships. Can the library model here really rise to a national model where perhaps like the state library is partnering with the state office, and then that is really trickling down versus we're doing more of a grassroots model. So I think the national office can assist with that. Another really exciting partnership are with the extension offices. So how can we think about those state universities that are in rural communities and how we can go further together in creating more pilots? Another really exciting partnership is with Main Street. Those are, for Colorado, 74 rural communities that are dedicated to business development. And how can we partner there to be thinking about how are businesses age inclusive? How are we training employees to thinking about being age inclusive? So I think those national partnerships, of course, all of our assets and our investments. I foresee that only getting bigger. And we know age-friendly work is really funded through AARP, through foundations, and we like to see even more government support of those programs.
Great. Well, thank you. Boy, this has been great information today for our listeners, volunteers, and staff as they all continue to address the needs of the rural population 50 plus in their state. So I want to thank each of you and all of you for sharing Colorado's story. And as we bring closure to this podcast, what else would any of you like to share about Colorado's rural communities initiatives? Anybody want to share anything?
I
You shared a
think,
lot. Go
well,
ahead,
I
Cristy.
think it's important that I think, and Marissa touched on this a little, like when you think rural, like there's like this like image that pops into your mind, whatever that is, right? And and Niki mentioned this too, like, and the reality is that rural can mean many things. It definitely means a diversity of people, a variety of ages and locations. You've got some very wealthy rural communities, right? And you've got some very poor rural communities and all of the spaces in between. Oh, and here, there are mountains and, and there's the plains and then maybe, there's the past that maybe shut down. And so on top of everything else, like there are these barriers, right? Sometimes very physical, geographic barriers. I have met people who've lived their entire lives in Colorado who will tell me when I tell them that I would go visit like a town, I've never heard of that place before. And I'm like, are you kidding? I know Amy there and also Jake. Like, what do you mean you've never heard of this town? There are people living whole lives there. And so if I can make an ask of the folks who are listening to this, whether you've ever lived in a rural community or not, I think now's the time to just get in your car or jump on a train and like visit places, like visit them. Because, and I always say this, like the middle of nowhere to you is the middle of everything and everywhere to so many people. And there's so much richness there. So here in Colorado, that looks very, very different in every single rural community. Hands down, I've never found a more home rule place in my life. And I'm from Florida, right? And I really think that getting in touch with in from real, like a really humble place, but a really interested, like curious kind of space, like you would find so many amazing things, right? Like, and I don't know, and you'll find beautiful things. And I think that it's worth taking a jaunt and visiting rural communities wherever you live and wherever you don't live too,
As you say that, it's like I could see a movie of, out of the way places for Colorado, and you show all these little towns, because you see these kind of shows all the time and you discover places that most of us don't know about. And you're right. And they're rich. It's amazing. So anything else, Marissa, you want to add?
I just want to reiterate something Niki brought up. I am just endlessly awestruck from the innovation, the ingenuity, and the creativity that I see coming out of rural communities and the best ideas, many times with the least resources, and truly inspiring, really inspiring. So I want to just lift that up that there's just so much really great replicable work happening. And I think that really can there it's really a sense of leadership from these communities that is exciting.
Yeah. I think the vibrancy and the energy is also very infectious. And you've obviously got that with the team you're working with, which I think is wonderful for you and your communities. But I really want to thank all of you today and staff and volunteers. We encourage you to subscribe to our Roost News podcast channel on YouTube and or listen to the audio version on your favorite platform. And of course, please invite your colleagues to join us too. And on behalf of our Roost News podcast team, we want to thank all of you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.